for tonight, our Soul Connection segment, I have asked Greg to talk about a product that is super near and dear to my heart. It's this one right here. Some of y'all may have guessed. And I will tell you, it's near and dear to my heart for so many reasons, because it does so much, right? It helps with muscle preservation and digestion and calming stress and so many things. I'll tell you, if you're on a weight loss journey, the more you take of these, the more the waistline goes like this, right? Like, so if you want to shrink the waistline, you might want to add some of these to your program. But it does so many things. I have, of course, the president and founder of Solle Naturals with us tonight to give us all the details, or at least, you know, as many details as we can fit in this segment on Verdezymes, and tell us all about how it can help us to reach our optimal digestive goals.
Another stellar lesson from Erica. I'm just sitting here absorbing it, loving it, and I learned lots of good things. So true, and so many lessons. And I wish, you know, I was listening like every week. I'm just amazed at how clearly you teach things, Erica. But I was thinking, you know, the people that I know that have this information that you taught tonight, you know, they maybe they have, you know, a pretty big portion, maybe not every little thing, but that really understand the concepts that you talked about. I don't know a single one of them that does not take enzymes on a daily basis, a single one of them, because it's not just like, oh, you take them at a certain age because we don't produce enough. It's all about the understanding where food is today and understanding what more these enzymes do besides, you know, the breaking down. And I really don't know a single one that doesn't. And it's something that I won't miss either. So there can't be something more core and vital. I know we're saying that with a few things, but enzymes are one of those few things. You just don't want to overlook them really, really ever. And enzymes are not particularly expensive. Even very high quality formulas like the Solle Verdezymes, ours is more complex. And I will tell you, we got more than a few double takes when we decided to include herbs with the enzymes. Because I've seen enzyme products that have them, but they're very trace. If you really knew how much, they barely put a sprinkle, what I call fairy dusting in formulas so that they can put it on the label. But really putting significant amounts is not common. But you know, in Solle, that's right in with our philosophy of addressing in every product. And no one's taught it more clearly than you did tonight, Erica. It starts north and it goes south. And stress is a north to south thing too. And so there really isn't any way to be successful without addressing the north. And that's why Verdezymes is a blue, by the way, is a blue label. It's because from everything that we know, we're learning all the time, right? The best of sharing with each other and in natural communities, and the best of science. When the body's in a rest state, that's when certain reparative and digestive functions, that's when they're stimulated or they jump into action or they're prompted into action. And Erica talked about that wonderfully today. So Verdezymes, it has a few uniquenesses. One is that it has calming herbs, 4 of them. In fact, the teaching that you brought tonight about addressing cephalic phase, about addressing that, that's so important that we didn't just add 1 herb to address it, or 2 or 3. We added 4, and I realized that 2 of them tend to drop further south in their common fame for uses. The marshmallow, the peppermint, those are 2 of the 4 often used to calm, say, the midsection or lungs and heal this tract that Erica's been teaching about. Heal the mucus. When there can be lesions, there can be all sorts of different things in there. Imbalances, the probiotics, the microbiome can be depleted because of acidity and stress and lots of different things. And these 2 herbs make a difference in that. And in fact, peppermint itself, one of the studies, I was thinking about it when you mentioned people who've had gallbladder removed, because now they don't have the high concentration that sits in the gallbladder. They just have what the liver's producing. Well, peppermint is shown to actually increase bile production. So if I've got this weak, I'm behind the 8 ball, well, I can do something that can protect liver and increase bile production and increase that trickle a little bit. And so, and really make a difference there. So those are 2 of the 4, but the other 2 are, it's hard to say pure cephalic in nature because nothing really is in a plant, but very, very focused there. Wood betony and passion flower. And that's the one that people are like, what? Passion flower with your enzymes, and wood betony, I don't know. It doesn't take too long to convince people that it makes a good fit. But both of those are wonderful fits. They are great difference makers. I could run down 10 different studies in recent years on wood betony with about anything you can think of that throws into imbalance the brain and the signaling that it's trying to carry out, like even ear infections of different types anywhere in the head, sinus or ear or whatever. And wood betony, I mean, I'm reminded of a study. There was a fragrance journal. They published a study of a bunch of herbs. It is funny to me that that's where it was published. And the highest one in antibacterial and microbial properties was wood betony. People don't always think of it as this great antimicrobial, but it is. And issues with inflammation, other issues. I'm thinking of Gillian Painter, who wrote a book called Materia Medica for I think Southern Hemisphere. He is from New Zealand, by the way. I was just looking up because I was trying to think, who is this Gillian? Has written actually quite a few books, really useful books on herbs. And he talks about, this is a man with tons of years in this, that it is one of the few herbs, is wood betony, for this north focus for digestion, that has a restorative effect on the nerves and nervous. So it's not just about mitigating our management of stress, but actually it has a restorative effect. And some early writings in the 1600s in the British, it's in like a certain British compendium, where I'm not even sure who the author is, a daily decoction on wood betony, and I think it was like raw milk for all matters of head, like from aches and pains to foggy brain to just any kind of matter of imbalance in our brain. This was the remedy of choice, so much so that it's found in a bunch of different writings. But it is one of the key factors in Verdezymes. So there are the herbs, and the herbs are, I just love what we learned tonight about north to south, because they're very much there to help us balance the north, strengthen the north, even restorative, as we've heard about in the case of wood betony. The enzymes are not a run-of-the-mill enzyme group. That's the second part that I wanted to share tonight. They are specifically selected. There is an ample group for a typical meal if you take 2 capsules to digest all the food types. And in there, we actually added extra of something called glucoamylase, because there are so many studies that show more hard to digest carbs that tend to cause more bloating, gas, and other digestive imbalance. They are really effectively dealt with by glucoamylase. If you get enough of it, and if it's in your blend, and so this is another reason, because man, the percentage of people that say, okay, when I eat, I get full, I feel full too fast. I haven't eaten hardly anything yet, and I feel like bloated full, or I feel a little bit of acid, or I feel gas, or pain. I get these weird pains, don't know what the pains are, and I only get them when I eat. I mean, there's all these different things. The enzyme blend will deal with all of these issues. Now, there may be more to them, but it will deal in every single one of those issues. And one of the reasons is the glucoamylase and the balance of the others for fats, sugars or carbs, and proteins. The protein group is the other half of the story on this unique enzyme blend, because generally you'll see a company will select a source of a protein digestive agent or a protease, right?
And I mean, often pineapple, often papaya, these are two really heavily used in the industry because they're wonderful and readily available throughout the world. And then you'll also see specific just protein products that are super high dose. And I've even seen somewhere they'll list them. They'll list 2 or 3, but it's 2 or 3 different concentrations of the same one. And that does have a purpose, but I will tell you how the Solle formula is different. In the case of the Solle formula, this is what, not that you have to know this, but if it helps you remember, just like that there are 4 herbs to deal with this blue calming factor that's so key that Erica taught us tonight, there are 4 proteases, same number of both of those. That is coincidental, I will tell you, if that was not on purpose, but it helps us to remember. So why? Why did we do 4? Well, in the case of the herbs, why did we do 4? Same reason with the protease, or similar reasons. There is not one single plant that is identical to another. And even if it has a lot of the same components, I have heard debates from scientists, have been in the room, where a bunch of learned scientists after 30, 40 years will tell you that, for instance, calcium is the same, whether it's in calcium carbonate or citrate or lactate or in this herb or that herb. And the results show that that is simply not the case, because you can't look at a part of a structure of something and ignore the rest, the differences of the rest, and assume that it will act the same in the body. That may sound mathematical or logical, but it actually, in all of its evidence, is shown to not be true. The same would be with these wonderful blue calming herbs. They work a little differently, and we're all unique, and sometimes our needs are a little different. The thing that works just perfectly on target for me is a little different, for you. So that's part of the reason there are 4, is that, and part is that in the case of these herbs, they have this spectrum of things they do, and there's overlap in the spectrum, but there's also part of the spectrum that is unique for each herb. In other words, that nothing else of those 4 would do that one will do. That is why we did 4 proteases. But in the case of the proteases, we did 2 things. We first doubled the dose. So we took a full dose, even if we were to only use 1 protease, a full dose of each one. So now we have 4 times the dose, 4 proteases. Then we doubled all of them. So you can do the math and see why Verdezymes is so restorative. And I'll come back to the restorative part in just a second. But the reason for this is that the more we investigated, the more we could see, one, that they operate a little differently because the chemical structures are not identical, but 2, they actually work in different acid environments. And the reason why someone can use a protease sometimes and go, that did everything for me, it was what I wanted, and someone else can go, I took the high dose of that and it didn't do a thing, is because they actually have this spectrum of pH that they are most effective in and least effective in. And there is overlap, but they are also different. In other words, there's territory, like with the herbs, that does not overlap any other. So we tried to get the broadest, we very simply just tried to get the broadest range of pH we could of proteases. And that's why there are 4, because we got a much broader spectrum, meaning that depending on what's going on in your life and in your alimentary canal and everything that it connects to, your odds are much higher of seeing a good result, because at least 2 or 3, if not all of them, it just depends, but at least 2 or 3 of those proteases are going to be dialed in for you. I say at least 2 because that's how broad the range is. And so that's the reason that there are 4. The final thought that I'd like to leave you with tonight is that lots of studies point to taking these wonderful enzymes on an empty stomach, say before you go to bed. And that's why when we launched this, people were like, I will tell you, they'd started using them, because that's when it's not being utilized in so much anyway, in digestion, as much as absorbed and then used for what I would call a reconstruction. Muscles, purifying blood, abnormal cells, blood sugar levels, you could go fats in bloods. You could go down the list. Erica could probably give you a lot longer list than I could. Lydia probably could too, but it's a long list. And these proteases are like the captains of the host. I mean, other enzymes and substances help in this, but they lead it out and they're so powerful. There's great German research that they did with, I'm not sure, I think it might have been athletes in muscle repair, recovery a lot faster with this. Dr. Allison reminded us that inflammation with proteases. This was the preferred prescription when Advil, ibuprofen, those things were not yet invented. You have to go back that far. Why? Because it actually worked. You had to take them. Now, I will tell you this, the concentrations and the quality were not available back then as are now. So they were taking a lot more, and a lot of people just didn't want to take that much. You don't need to of this, but you can take it multiple times in a day, and you can listen to your body, start small, and then build up and see what the capsule dose is for you, where you see change. So that's the end of the story. Is the proteases are half the enzyme story, because they're the restorers, rejuvenators, repairs, reconstruction, probably among other things, part of this formula. Okay, I probably talked too long, Erica, but that's everything I got.
It's never too long. It's never too long. But I love all of this information. I will tell you, the protease in here gets me super excited. I mean, this whole product, this formula, I mean, it's really just, I mean, it's incredible, but the proteases really do get me super excited, because one of the things too is like, not only just everybody's different, but we're all different on any given day, depending on what we're dealing with. Our pHs are different every single day, depending on what we've eaten, or, you know, if we got in a fight with our spouse, or, you know, whatever it is. And so we can rely on, like, we know that more than likely, like there's a really super high chance that regardless, this is going to cover it. Like, so it's really going to help it. And this is the reason why, guys, I said, this helps with muscle preservation. If you're on a weight loss journey, you want to keep your, you want to have like your muscles really like strengthened, like so that you're not losing muscle while you're losing fat. Verdezymes. Like if you lift weights, Verdezymes. Like if you're an athlete, you're on a, you know, like some kind of journey, Verdezymes. Like this is the thing. Like if you're adding to your program, right? We've talked about the foundation. This is that thing that's like Verdezymes. Just like last week, you notice I buy it in the big bottles, right? Like there's a reason for that, right? Because we're eating this like candy in the house. I mean, not really, but yeah, we take a lot of those. And then Verdezymes, we're taking a lot of this too. So we love both these products and absolutely love Verdezymes. But I got a question while I have you, Greg. So I get a question quite often about the xanthan gum and cognac gum in the formula, and what is that? And why is it in there?
Yeah, that actually is the evolution of something that came from 30 years ago now in my own herbal journey. What companies were doing that really kind of were ahead of the curve. They were putting probiotics and some of them enzymes in enteric coated capsules because these are the nature of these. If you can get them further down from further south, I love this north south, then they would be even more effective. Okay, and get them more of them intact into the small intestine. And to do that, it can't be digested in like 25 minutes in the stomach. The odds go way down. So if you can stretch that out to 45 minutes. So what they were doing is they were enteric coating these capsules. But the problem is it makes the capsules really brittle and they can actually break or lose integrity and open up much sooner. What we determined to do with our chemist even before we founded Solle, while we were in the developmental phase, was use two very well-known that are acid resistant, but completely soluble fibers. Xanthan and konjac they both qualify. And then they have some other qualities that are good. I will tell you, this is a very small amount of them. I had someone ask me once, oh, so I'm getting fiber from this. No, you're not. There's not. This is such a small amount. All it is enough to bind to the various enzymes like a time release capsule. That's how I describe it. And so even though the capsule that might adjust in 25, you get these fibers that envelop and bind to them, and you get all that goodness going a little further, going 45 minutes-ish, which is usually going to get you into your small intestine. So that's the reason it really is, we call it FiberTract, further in your tract. You know, the fiber to get it further in your tract, that's where that came from. So that's what it is.
I love it. I love it. So it's definitely good stuff. That's what I always tell people. Oh, that's just good stuff.